Hello everybody, now we are online again.
Hi everyone. So we are currently inviting Dr. Tong from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, talking about his years of CLIL pedagogy in higher education. We are very honored to invite him for our channel. And Dr. Tong, would you be able to introduce yourself? Please?
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy to be here to share my experience with everybody. I regard myself as a practitioner in EAP, English for Academic Purposes, and I have over 30 years experience of teaching EAP in Hong Kong at two universities, Hong Kong University and since 1991 the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So I've been involved in different layers of EAP curriculum development and teaching. At the moment we have 8,000 undergraduates.
Wow.
And then about 2,000 postgraduates. And our EAP courses cover the whole range, students at all four levels, year 1 to year 4, and undergraduate level, and then we also have master's and PhD students. So I think I have learned, it's a lifelong, continuous professional learning experience. I have learned over the last 30-something years and sort of gradually changed my approaches and my beliefs, pedagogic beliefs in teaching EAP myself with my own colleagues at UST. So I'm happy to share my experience with everybody here.
Mm-hmm. Just to contextualize your university, are there, so the undergraduate students and graduate students are only just from Hong Kong? What are the student body?
We have some kind of policy in Hong Kong when we, because we are all state-funded universities, so we have a cap on the number of non-local students we can admit. So roughly speaking, we're talking about 80% local Hong Kong students, and then 20% of international students. And among these 20% international students, we can have one big majority population. They are students from the PRC, People's Republic of China. They constitute maybe 10 to 12%, and the remaining 8 to 10% are literally from all over the world.
So both undergraduate and graduate?
Yes, actually, with postgraduates, that we have a pretty sizable population from China. Maybe you're talking about 70 to 80% of students from China, and 20% from, again, different countries.
Thank you so much. So we are very looking forward to learn about his CLIL experience over 30 years. So we have 3 questions that were generated by some of the audience who has looked at Dr. Tong's slides. And one of the very first questions that comes up was, what is asset-based CLIL approach? We heard about CLIL, but why is it asset-based?
I think traditionally, and actually, as I said, I kept learning and changing my own approach myself. The more conventional way of teaching university students English is that we regard the students as a kind of, they come to us with inadequate abilities in English. And that's why this is traditional view. When they come to us, their English is simply just not good enough. And they may struggle with listening to lectures, they may struggle with taking part in class discussion, they may struggle in writing essays and giving presentations. So we make up for that gap. That is the traditional view. And that's the deficit model. And then at that time, there's also another belief that this is all a fixed set of study skills. And so we were looking at where the gaps are. And we do some sort of diagnosis, and then we decide, all right, these students are not good enough in listening to and understanding lectures, and so we've got to fill that listening gap. And then when they find that they write with they do not express their ideas too well in English, then we look at the writing and we say, oh, the grammar is not good enough. There are inaccuracies in the grammar. And then when they are quiet in the classroom, taciturn in the classroom, we say, oh, they are not confident enough, they can't speak well, and we thought we could just fill that gap by giving them the skills that they lack. So that was a traditional view. But over the years, with development in our profession of EAP and also applied linguistics, there is a paradigm shift to looking at teaching English at university as academic literacies. And there are 2 or 3 specific features or elements in this kind of view. One is that the traditional fix it or improve your English, this kind of approach doesn't help students because, number one, you don't have the confidence. And number 2, there is not one kind of academic English. There are many different kinds of academic English depending on the subject discipline, depending on what students have to do in year 1, year 2, year 3, master studies, PhD studies. So the kind of language that they come across and the kind of language they have to use in their language output are very different depending on the demands and the context of language use. And so in terms of the first element of giving students the confidence and the reassurance, then we don't want to use the fixed approach, but we tell students, you can do English, your English is fine, but you can do better in this specific context. And so we change students' mindset from regarding themselves as language learners, right? Perpetual learning language learners for over 15 years to language users. That means you're already using English, but you want to refine your ability to use English appropriately in the appropriate context. And that is what academic literacy is all about. Getting students to focus on the specific use of English in the specific context according to their academic studies. And so, and in this particular view, the notion of native speakerness becomes irrelevant. So our students can be students from Hong Kong, from China, or they can come from all over the world, the UK, Canada, Australia. But we take them through the same learning processes because you can say there are native speakers of English, but there are no native speakers of academic literacies. Everybody learns academic literacies in school, at university. And so native speakers and non-native speakers learn together.
Okay, and in here, can I jump in with one of the questions that I just think of? Because several days ago I was talking to one of the teachers, and he comes to an argument like, I like what you said, but it's an ideology, and in the classroom. But eventually we have to get the students to write very good academic English, no matter whether they feel comfortable or not comfortable. They have to reach the goal finally, right? So some of the teachers may say this as an ideological movement, rather than really helping students to get used to the academic literacy. Then how would you respond to that?
I think you probably touch on 2 issues. One is the pedagogy, teaching and learning process, and also the assessment. I agree with you completely that it's no good just giving them confidence when they still cannot write well or speak well and they cannot achieve the academic purposes. So you need measurement of the progress and whether they reach the target ability level. And so the point is that it's like teaching somebody how to jump, right? So you have to jump 6 feet, and then you help them move on from 5 feet, 5 feet 2, 5 feet 4 inches, and you help them achieve the target. So in terms of assessment, in terms of ideology, then you define the goals for the students. And here we're talking about achieving academic literacy purposes or achieve certain learning outcomes in terms of three things. Number one, the context, and number two, the purpose, and number three, the audience. And so they are no longer writing a composition, which is a general word, or an assignment for the teacher. Whatever they write, it is not for the English teacher. It is for achieving an academic purpose. So I'll give you one example. One of the courses that I helped to develop is a course for mechanical engineering majors who are in the third year of study. And I was instrumental in developing the course 3 or 4 years ago. And so we worked very closely with the mechanical engineering professors, one professor in particular who was very, very helpful. And so there are two focuses of this course. One is synchronized with a laboratory course that students are taking at the same time of taking the language course. And for that mechanical engineering laboratory course, students have to write lab reports. And so we look at the lab manuals provided by the mechanical engineering professor. We actually observed students getting involved in the 3-hour lab session. And then we designed certain tasks and learning tasks and assessment tasks, which basically helps them to write good lab reports for the other content-based course in the same semester. And so with this kind of close collaboration with subject teachers, we can then ensure, and we also involve the subject professors in giving us feedback on what is good lab reports, what are the features, what are we looking for. And ultimately we design a grid for assessing the students' lab reports. And together with the TAs and so on, we looked at the students' writing and we give students feedback. And so here we achieve our purpose of helping students attain certain learning outcomes in the subject content course, but we raise awareness about genre, about language features, about the writing format of mechanical engineering lab reports as opposed to a physics lab report, biology lab report. And so we teachers learn with the students or before the students do, and we take students through the process of learning to write mechanical engineering lab reports. And then there is credibility. Students, two things. Number one, because we work closely with mechanical engineering professors, students know that we are not just English teachers. We are experts in mechanical engineering lab reports ourselves from learning from the professors and looking at lots and lots of texts. And number two, students in certain jargon, this is called high surrender value. That means they learn from us and they can immediately apply it to their own subject content studies. Right. So high surrender value comes from insurance language. So you learn it and you can immediately apply it.
So I think just going back to one of your statements about acknowledging multi-literacies the students have, and then also coordinate with discipline-specific needs, and then challenge features. But as we may have known, that there are multiple literacies that are from their rate that varies enormously. And how do we choose, because one course has very limited capacities, and to embrace all the literacies. And I wonder how, as a teacher or the instructor, could be able to engage in acknowledging multiple literacies as well as helping students to learn discipline conventions.
Okay, so I can address this question at two levels. One is from individual EAP teachers' perspective, and we hope we have a big center with over about 70 EAP teachers. I hope that all EAP teachers are good lifelong learners and have the interest and the capacity to keep learning. Because this is what makes EAP teaching interesting, because you keep learning and you never stop learning. From an organizational point of view, because I was director and associate director of the center, it may not be realistic to expect every individual teacher to become experts in science and engineering, English and everything. So we organize ourselves in kind of teams. So there's a team of about maybe 20, 15 teachers who have expressed interest in teaching engineering English or engineering or science English, and they form a team in developing courses and in teaching those courses, and they do a bit of collaborative learning. And if a certain teacher becomes a little bit fed up with engineering English, they want to learn about business English, they can move across. So you can then have a very sort of organic way of generating knowledge with a lot of group effort, peer learning among the teachers. And then individually, we also allow teachers the opportunity to find something they enjoy doing. For example, we happen to have, EAP teachers come from various backgrounds, and most of us have a master's or a PhD in applied linguistics or language teaching. But in terms of first degree, we have a teacher whose first degree is in chemistry, a teacher whose first degree is in biology, and then those people, one whose first degree is in mechanical engineering. And so those people are the informants who are more sensitive to those kinds of genre. And so through a lot of professional learning activities, we just keep learning.
I have this question from April. Question 1. Sometimes the EAP teachers do not consider themselves proficient enough in academic literacy in a specific discipline like nursing or engineering. How to improve their confidence? And number 2, which is related, how to engage the discipline specialists in collaboration with language specialists in CLIL in universities?
Right. I mean, these are two very good questions that we ask ourselves as well. To be honest, we have self-doubt and everything. What do I know about nursing English? What do I know about mechanical engineering English? I think, okay. so back to my own, I think we hope, we hope all EAP teachers have this capacity and this urge to take risks. If I am assigned to teach nursing English, at the moment at our university we don't have nursing. Suppose suddenly UST, our university, decides to start a nursing department, and then they come to our center and say, can you provide EAP in nursing? Then we cannot just say, no, we can't. we in our center we have an obligation to respond to the need, and so we say no worries. We give us a bit of lead time, and then we will then start talking to the professors. We can then look for materials like the kind of texts that nursing students have to read, and then we do a bit of investigation about what are the language-dependent output of nursing students? Like, do they write essays? Do they write reports? Do they write proposals? Do they write whatever learning journals? Then once we know the input materials that nursing students have to grapple with, then we are the first ones to start to play the roles of nursing students. We are the first ones to look at the text that they have to read, the kind of lectures they have to attend, and ideally, if I can actually myself sit in a nursing lecture, then I live through the experience of the students. And we EAP teachers with our linguistic expertise, our discourse analysis expertise, can then see through the text and the lecture features of nursing lectures. We can then transform these insights into learning materials. So we are the interface. We play nursing students ourselves, and then we know what are the focuses, and then we take the nursing students when they come through this learning process. In a way, when I go into the classroom, suppose I have a group of nursing students in my class, I would tell my students, all right, I'm not a nursing expert, I'm not teaching the nursing, but we are here together to explore nursing language. Let us work together.
Yeah, I find that very really empowering to say that I'm just learning together with you. Maybe I'm just learning 10 minutes ahead of you. Whereas learning this nursing language or this language of the nursing discipline together.
This also goes back to one of the issues that arose is about critical pedagogy. Contesting and negotiating that particular genre, that kind of language. So, as Angel says, we are learning together. I have language expertise. I can help you with expressing ideas well and better in English, but we're learning together. And ultimately, it is a nursing profession who will be judging whether you are admitted to the discourse community, whether you can function well in the nursing industry.
But still here, I like to raise this critical EAP perspective from Sarah Dinesh, that we also would like to advocate for students, like if in the nursing language, there's some unnecessarily complex conventions, we can actually talk back to the nursing professionals, say, hey, maybe we can change this lab report format, make it not so unnecessarily complex. So we are not just imposing whatever the conventions. We also need to advocate or at least offer a counter proposal to the nursing professionals or the content professionals.
So this is what I learned when I was on that point, Angel, when I was dealing with the mechanical engineering professor. He showed me some of the lab reports the students wrote, and he said, this is good, this is not good. And can you tell me more, why is this good or is this not good? Because most subject discipline teachers, professors are too busy to give detailed feedback, and they're not trained in language teaching to give useful feedback. And the students has got a mark, I don't know why, but I got 87. I don't know why, but I got 64. And then I would ask that professor, and after that, my colleague and I came up with a set of marking criteria, which then helps the professor articulate what he's looking for. And so I'm still pretty proud of that particular one-page set of criteria. Then my colleague Andrew and I took it to the professor. I said, so this is what we come up with after listening to you and reading a lot of the assignments based on your feedback and your marks. And then he said, yeah, this looks good. This is exactly what I want.
But you're explicitly conceptualizing their implicit knowledge.
And articulating what they...
You're making their implicit knowledge explicit and expressing it for them. This is the first step. And the second step, if in the process you might find that some of their expectations or requirements might not be necessary or really useful for the students, then we could also negotiate with them, maybe.
Yes, that is going back to Sarah Benesch. It's a negotiating process. Actually, from my experience, of course, it's never easy to get this support and this kind of. You have to build up the mutual trust gradually. But once you establish this kind of rapport, a good mutually trusting work relationship, the professors are actually very receptive because they can see the benefits. It's win-win. When the students submit better lab reports, he is happy. They benefit themselves.
I'm saying it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
That is, the conventions imposed by the disciplinary professionals is one side of the coin. But as applied linguists, we could see that whether some of these conventions can be changed or just arbitrary. So we can also propose changing some of those conventions.
Definitely, over time. What is the second question asked just now? Apart from
collaboration.
All right, I think we touched on that. As I said, I've been working at the university for 29 years. So it helps that I actually know a lot of professors personally. And so it really helps when you approach them with some sort of original personal relationship beforehand. Cold calls, you're not going to do. May work sometimes, but it's more difficult. And so, and also, I was also talking to other people just now. I am quite sure, I mean, everybody is so busy at the university, but there is usually, in each department, I can guarantee there is usually 2 or 3 people who are more receptive. And once you find 1 or 2 allies, you build on the relationship, and gradually you can get buy-in from more people.
I find this having them in a dialogue, in a conversation, really helps them.
Okay, so just now you because it's related to one of the questions as well. Just now you mentioned a positive, a successful example of collaboration with the content professors. So I was wondering, have you ever encountered any like maybe not so successful experience that is that you can share so that maybe we don't fall into the same hole again?
I think I can share one experience, but overall, again, with so many other things in life, you have to be determined. You have to be hard-nosed about it. If you have the door slammed in front of you, you have to take it in your stride. Not that it will happen. So I can tell you one experience. It was almost 10 years ago when I worked very closely with a chemical engineering professor, again, who trusts me a lot, and we have been good friends on a professional basis. And he was teaching a year 1. He is a kind of very senior professor, and so he was teaching one course that was in a 3-year curriculum in chemical engineering called Design and Process, and it is introduction to, for example, as chemical engineer, how can you use chemical engineering knowledge to design, for example, a new paper cup which will not scorch your hand when you hold hot coffee and so on and so forth. Any kind of new design, or even toothpaste, which is just the right level of viscosity, not too thick, not too thin, not too watery, and so on. And so we had made an agreement that he would bring me into the course so that I would sit in his lectures in the first 4 or 5 weeks, and I would give 2 or 3 lectures myself on engineering communication. And then at the end of the course, every student, they form teams of three or four, and they will have to have a design project from beginning to end. And we have a scenario saying that you work as a summer intern for any company like P&G or Johnson and Johnson, and then you are now making a presentation to the CEO. Right, we have a brilliant idea to make a product which will give us an extra advantage. We can get a big share in the market, and so that is the context. And the students have to make this presentation, and the benefit of that is that I will give them input on how to make this kind of presentation, the organization, the structure, the language, the persuasive language, how to respond to questions. And now, it's important that the professor brought me in as a co-teacher instead of somebody from the language center. And so I have credibility thanks to that chemical engineering professor. And I was given time to give lectures. And then in the assessment, another important point is that my colleague, Professor Chen, and I would co-assess the presentation, giving equal weighting. I have so 50-50.
Wow.
There are other arrangements when the language teacher is brought in as some sort of adjunct.
Yeah.
Okay, the professor will give 90% of the mark, and this language teacher will give 10% of the mark. And this language teacher cannot comment on the content, he can only comment on the language use. Now that really diminishes the role of the language teacher. But the professor gives the impression to all the students that language is a big part of content. You cannot do content well without the right language. And so there's literally content-language integration. And so we did it for 1 year, and it went down very, very well. Now, this is a success story. Next year, because the professor was too busy, he said, I'm not teaching this course anymore. So somebody else is teaching. And then this person is still, Professor Chen is Hong Kong Chinese, and then Professor Porter, who took over the course, is a British, somebody from the UK, and he is still amenable to the collaboration, and so he allowed me to sit in the lectures, and then I think I was also involved in the assessing, but the collaboration is much less detached, not so involved. The third year, Professor Porter left UST, we went back to the UK, all done. Everything stopped. So I didn't have time to write up the experience, but it's really good learning experience for me. So it's both success and not really failure, but we're talking about sustainability. So the learning point for me is that on the one hand, you have to rely on individuals who let you in. On the other, it's even better to get support at the higher level, departmental level.
That's Oda-san, Professor Oda Masaki Sensei. He say, thank you very much, Dr. Tong, for sharing your experience. We, as a language teaching unit, he's in Japan, in Tokyo, is in a process of negotiating with academic departments for collaboration. So the lesson we've learned from your experience is once we've got the individual success, we might need to go up one level.
And build it into the system.
Build it into the departmental policy so that it has some kind of sustainability.
And so when I talk about assessment in EAP, we talk about an embedded approach to assessment. It's not for the simple thing is about credibility. You don't want the students to think, what does a language teacher know about chemical engineering? So if you're presented in the same light as the subject professor, so here is an expert in engineering communication. My learning from all these years is that it seems that when you use the expression English for something else, English for engineering, English for science, then you only play the bridesmaid's role. You are not the bride.
That's right.
Right? You are somebody just sending an aside.
Oh,
Right. And
that's right.
but if you are presented as engineering communication teacher, then you have your own right. You have students see you in a much more favorable light, and then you build up your credibility because you're an engineering communication expert rather than English teacher.
And I think we need to actually, in terms of research, we need to actually build up some successful case studies with evidence, with concrete evidence in terms of students' performance, so that we can show it to policymakers.
Yeah.
So that, see, if you give due weight to both language specialists and content specialists, here's the performance of the students compared to
before.
before. So we need an evidence-based approach, like Professor Jim Cummins before he retired from OIC. He's been working with teachers years and years, building up evidence, showing that if you allow students multilingual resources, then here's the performance is so good, the performance evidence, and that we can bring to the policymakers and to negotiate for policy change.
So one of the questions that came up is that in how does the asset-based CLIL approach can simultaneously enhance their academic literacy while developing their content knowledge? Can you give one example from your own experience?
Okay. So CLIL is one of the approaches we turn to, and also genre analysis, genre approaches. So EAP is the context where we work English for academic purposes. But then when it comes to teaching pedagogy, we follow from CLIL genre approach. So my involvement in CLIL goes back to about 12 years when I was involved in designing a course which is based on business case analysis for BBA, Bachelor in Business Administration undergraduates, students in business school who have to do business case analysis in their own subjects, in marketing, economics, and so on. But the business school professors would only just ask them, with this case, analyze it, without taking them through the steps, not to mention the language side of it. So we, in the Language Center, came in, and so this is deep collaboration between the business school and our Language Center, so that we take students in small tutorial groups of 20 students. In a way, we're teaching EAP. In another way, we're taking them through the business case analysis process. And that is a kind of CLIL approach. And again, it's meant to be win-win. Win-win because the business school wins because students become much more much more confident about business case analysis, in dealing with the language, in making presentations, in writing up case analysis. For us, the win is that we are not just trying a little bit, groping in the dark about what is the kind of business English that we should teach. Now, the actual business English comes in the business cases. And so these are ready-made business texts that students have to, again, cope with. And so we took the materials and teach them how to read for inferences, read to extract the salient points and so on. We teach them the language output skills of making presentations based on the business case analysis, writing up findings and so on. And so back to your question of how do you marry the two? So I used to teach that course, stopped for a few years. I'm teaching it again this semester. And you go into the classroom, so all CLIL teachers, whether in the European context, it's usually the other way around. It's a subject teacher who is also fluent in another language. doing it through another language.
Right.
In our case, it is the language teacher who is playing this role. You go into the classroom with dual focus, knowing that on the one hand, you are taking them through the business case analysis. So you, in a way, you're a content teacher.
Yes, yes.
And then at the same time, you know, ultimately you're actually listening to the language used, you're reading the language used, and if they analyze the case effectively, that is not the point. But if they present the findings in good, sophisticated language which is appropriate to the context, then you know you have achieved your learning outcomes. So the process is more content-based, and in the process, probably you don't. So during a lesson, if you have a 1 hour, 20-minute lesson, there are certain activities involving students in meaning-focused activities like task-based learning, and there are certain 20 minutes here and 10 minutes there when you can actually have form-focused, language-focused activities. You don't have to say it explicitly to the students. You know, you're monitoring the progress of language learning through the business discussion.
I have Oda-san, Masaki Sensei has another question related to what Dr. Tong is talking about assessment right now. I wonder if you had any academic disciplines in mind which are easier to collaborate with, or is it dependent very, very much on individual teachers? And then he clarifies his question. I'm not asking Dr. Tong for generalization, but in our case, in Masaki Sensei's situation in Japan, the language in his university, the language and education departments are the most difficult departments as they try to take control of assessment in both language and content.
Okay, if we start with our university. So our university is University of Science and Technology, and we have 4 major schools: Science School, Engineering School, Business and Management, and then Humanities and Social Science, where I belong to. To be perfectly honest, when I was involved in designing the business case analysis course, that was not too difficult because a lot of it, marketing, economics, we can just about pretend to be experts quite easily because a lot of it is to do with everyday life, and we're dealing with students who are only 17, 18, 19 years old. So we can read about marketing cases and management cases quite easily, and really understand the notions and concepts. And so in the classroom, if I take students through the analysis of the marketing case, the management case, I feel I am kind of expert, and I have face validity. But if I am teaching physics or math, the kind of text that they read is more abstract to me. And so I have to really suppress my fear and just get to the commonality of all academic writing. And that is basically the conclusion part. What are the implications of this piece of research? The actual mathematical formulae I will never understand in a million years. The chemical and chemical symbols and so on, I will never understand in a million years. But at the end of the day, when you read the conclusion part, everybody should understand, because what are the implications to life, to science? So if you really want to compare, most of us who have backgrounds in studying language and humanities will find business text much more easier to understand. In the case of education department, I honestly don't know, because education is a little bit philosophical, the discussion, and so the actual genre is, for example, if chemical engineering text, math text, take a look, you know this is chemical engineering, this is math, and this is marketing. Education is much broader, more philosophical. Yeah. So it's much more difficult to sort of describe and identify this is education text. Right? So in that case, the genre does not stand out that clearly. Like medical writing, you take one look, you know it is medicine. Right?
Questions? So I'm reflecting on my previous experience with collaboration with PD, and I wonder whether there is any case where faculty, discipline faculty, now understand the EAP or CLIL approach. Are they some cases where they are willing to take over the role of the language experts and then have an ownership? Because always collaboration is not always smooth.
This is actually even more difficult. From my experience, there are times when they think they can take back the ownership. I won't name the departments. There are a couple of departments at our university in the last few years who say, all right, we can do it ourselves. But ultimately, after 1 or 2 years, they knew they couldn't for a number of reasons. And basically, they're just very, very busy. And you know, the subject discipline professors have such heavy research commitments. And so ultimately, they come back knocking on our doors, can you do it for us? So it seldom happens that. And so, for example, I know at Hong Kong U, again, law and English, there's a lot of affinity. Yeah. But ultimately, I think it is usually the language center. The EAP, the unit which provides EAP support for students who are tasked and, more importantly, financed. We rely on financial support from our university to do this job. And the good news in Hong Kong is that all universities have this kind of setup, a language center, to do EAP work, because it goes back to the 70s when this need was recognized, initially at Hong Kong U, and then so when we were set up, our university is kind of young, 29 years old. When we were set up in 1991, when I joined the university, there is already provision of a language center to take care of this kind of provision. And that's exactly why we have 70 full-time English teachers to provide this all years, vertically year 1 to year 4 undergraduate studies, postgraduate studies, MPhil, and then PhD. And then this is vertical. And then horizontally, all schools, all departments get our support. And it takes quite a bit of, it's resource heavy. Yeah. But then that's only when you have such resources can you provide for everybody. So if you look at Japan, do the universities have this awareness about the importance of language and communication? If the university administration is not willing to put up the resources, then you can't do it in a very effective way.
Just a person who are from Korea and then being educated in North American universities, I'm not very familiar with the context of Hong Kong. And you mentioned about the deficit perspectives on CLIL that were being prevalent in that context. If you don't mind, could you give us understanding why? Because from my understanding of what you have said is the majority of the students are either Cantonese speakers or Mandarin speakers as their first language, and Hong Kong is known for medium of English, using English as a medium of instruction. And in that such linguistic environment, how does this deficit view of CLIL I cannot picture it from a person who is from Korea. So, if you don't mind, could you elaborate it?
Okay. I think is going back to the cliche of half a glass of water. Okay. So if you have half a glass of water, or maybe in the Hong Kong case, it's 3/4 full. But when we started looking at EAP 30 years ago, we still think it's only 3/4 full. It's still 1/4 short of the required standards, and that's why the universities, and the Hong Kong government decided to bring it up to scratch to fill that gap. Okay, and I think it's a good move, it's a good decision, because Hong Kong's competitiveness as an international city, international financial hub, depends on our graduates' ability to communicate in English with the international community. They go into multinational enterprises. If they are in academia, we have to produce graduates with very high, very strong academic literacy in English to go into different disciplines. So when we say Hong Kong in general, Hong Kong students' English is not bad at all. It's pretty high. I hope you don't mind compared to Korea.
Oh, yeah.
Then, but still we see that it's 3/4 full, but not quite full. And that's why we want to make up for the gap. And again, if you don't mind, in Korea, maybe the general English standards are a bit lower. Then it's 1/3 full. Then if Korean universities really want to make up for the gap, and if Korea is really determined to make your country more competitive in the global market, then maybe Korean universities have to think about enhancing and strengthening EAP at universities. But of course, the major difference is that our universities in Hong Kong, like ourselves, are English medium universities. In Korea, it's still primarily Korean medium.
I feel there is this colonial legacy and also native speakerism. So I think in Hong Kong, if you're fluent in English, they still ask you to speak like the Queen. I mean, who speaks like the Queen? Nobody speaks like the Queen.
There's only one Queen.
So this kind of mindset, I think it also contributes to the kind of discourse, that deficit discourse. And if you imagine that if you ask a university in England to learn everything in Chinese or in Japanese, then they will be so amazed, even if the students are making all kinds of what they would say grammatical mistakes in Chinese or Japanese. They will still, wow, these students are learning in Japanese. These students are learning chemistry in Chinese, right? So you see this kind of inequality or hierarchy among the world's languages. So I agree, we need to move away from the deficit discourse and gap discourse. And we need to affirm how much students are doing when you're using an additional language.
I can actually share my own experience myself. I won't take up too much time. When I was admitted to Hong Kong University back in 1974 as an undergraduate, I had to take a test, and I scored rather low I'm sorry about this. I feel a little embarrassed and I was required to take English courses. I actually did not like it. I felt a little bit aggrieved, resentful about it. I thought my English was good enough. So that is the attitude, because your English, you don't speak the Queen's English, so you have to make up for it. So that is the deficit model, and did not help my motivation. Right? But then I had another realization, moment of truth, when I was doing my MA at the University of Reading, 85, 86. And then 1986, I was finishing my MA course, and I believe I was doing pretty well in my MA. And then it was something like a sunny day in May when my warden was chatting to me, and he said, "Hey, are you finishing your MA?" I said, "Yeah, I'm finishing up my dissertation writing." And then my warden said, "Oh, you're from Hong Kong, you're a certainty, you'll be fine." And that's when I knew that's the first time I hear, I have been brought up to feel that my English is not good enough. I'm still really learning, struggling. And then there is this comment from a warden in the UK, and he has been talking with students from Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and Hong Kong, and he said, "You're from Hong Kong, you're fine." And
Still,
this is kind of realization for me.
I know it's encouraging. Still, I don't want to set up a hierarchy between Hong Kong and Taiwan. I feel like we need to be encouraging to all of these learners and users. And it's so amazing learning something in your additional language. It's so amazing.
Any last questions you want?
Well, I think that we have, even though we haven't asked individual questions like separately, our conversation have covered, I guess, most of the questions that is
I
here.
actually have a question here from Jia, saying, "Thank you, Dr. Tong, for the sharing. Many universities in mainland China are starting to have EAP programs. The case of Hong Kong UST is a very valuable experience for us to learn from." And then another question. The transition from teaching general English to teaching EAP could be challenging for teachers. How do we, as researchers or as academic units, provide support for teachers? It's changing from just teaching so-called general English to teaching English for academic literacies.
There is no formal systemic support for teachers to help them move from teaching general English, say, in the secondary school, to teaching EAP at university. Almost all of us in our center make the leap ourselves. So when we recruit teachers from secondary school, we recruit teachers who teach in post-secondary, like IC in Hong Kong. And to be perfectly honest, when we do the interviewing, when we look at people's CVs, we look at their credentials, experience, and we try to see, right, this person is ready to make that leap. And we hope that when they come into our center through peer learning, through teaching, learning on the job, they will gradually enhance their expertise and insights in EAP. There is simply no one transition program.
I can do, if you allow me to do a commercial. Take the CLIL in the University of Hong Kong.
Right, CLIL, and there are certain courses in Hong Kong and in the UK which specializes English for academic purposes. So if you go onto the internet, there are some courses, either it's MEd or MA, with either a concentration or it is already named MA in EAP. There are some courses like that.
I think the major kind of cultivation is to become an analyst, genre, register, language analyst, and also from our previous speakers last year in Sunny, to become critical linguistic ethnographers with our students. So teachers need to become critical linguistic ethnographers with our students. We keep learning, right? It's learning the evolving, the new registers, new genres, new ways of speaking and writing in different disciplines.
Another commercial, not on my behalf, but there is an association called BALEAP, BALEAP, British Association of Lecturers of English for Academic Purposes. If you go to the BALEAP website, you can see a framework developed in 2008 about the professional expertise required of EAP teachers. And that is very, very useful. There are altogether 4 main categories, 11 elements.
Do they have this critical perspective?
Yes,
I'm
not sure whether it's specifically about. No.
I mean, not only, but they must. It's necessary, but not sufficient. Critical perspective.
So go to the BALEAP website, look up the framework for EAP teachers. In a way, it's very, very useful reference. Like if you want to be a complete, accomplished EAP teacher, these are all the attributes that you are expected to have.
Still, I feel like it's the heart, and the heart to say it's not a deficit, it's an asset. We're working with the students, we're learning together, we are analyzing the different literacies of different disciplines together. Then it's rather than a whole inventory of skills and knowledges that we prescribe for teachers. I feel like it's not a skill set. It's a mindset. It's a heart set. A heart set is how we do to have this new word, a heart set. People talk about skill set these days or mindset a long time ago. I was create this new word, a heart set. We need to have this heart. In Cantonese, we have this idiom, 有 heart.
In better Cantonese, 有 heart is colloquial. In better Chinese, it's called 無忘初心. That means don't forget why you become.
We're here to work with students and advocate for students the best we could. We're under a lot of constraints, but we don't want to do this I approach that Lillies and Scott in the UK critique. This I is identification and induction. That is, we identify the genres, the registers, the linguistic features of these academic writing, and identify, right? I. And then we induce students, we socialize students into writing and speaking, conforming to these conventions without a critical perspective. So what about we end this interview? We want to thank Dr. Keith Tong.
Thank you for watching as well.
And we want to thank the audience so much. Yeah. So please, as the final remarks.
Yeah. Always. Please remember to like our video first, and then please subscribe to it. And also set a reminder to yourself whenever we post a new link. There was a little bell there. Remember to click on the bell, and so that next time when we are online, you will receive a notification. And also, after this live event, we will put all the related resources down below the comments. So you will be able to access some of the resources we mentioned today, and also you will see a minute note that helps you to navigate our more than 1 hour video. So we would like to thank you again for joining our live event, and we are looking forward to seeing you again in our next event,
which is on November 22nd. We have Dr. Jerry Won Lee, Korean American from University of California, Irvine. And his topic is really interesting. It's about trans-languaging and assessment. So look out for our announcement Okay, and send our YouTube link to our research YouTube link to your colleagues, friends, students, get them to like it, to subscribe to it. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.